Pastor Peter preached an amazing message. If you weren't here at the 8 o'clock, I recommend that you go online and grab it. He preached at the 8 a.m. And it's great insight in the area of suffering, so I would recommend that you get that. And it's part of our focus on eternity, and that's where we want to focus. Guys, were we able to resurrect that thing? Is that a thumb up? Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm easily distracted at times. And maybe I'm not the only one. I'm this guy. If you'll clip that video, this is who I am a lot of times.
He made me this collar. He is a good and smart master, and he made me this collar so that I may talk. Squirrel! My master is good.
My wife says that dog and I are kindred spirit. I'll be doing something really deep, and all of a sudden, squirrel! I'm over here. Rather than focusing on what I should be focusing on, it's easy to get distracted, and life is full of distractions. And we're going to talk about focus today and the importance of focusing on the things of God and keeping our attention on the things of God. It's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to get blinded by things that come our way. It's so easy when stuff happens to say, God, why in the world did you do this? And then we take our focus off him and put it on something else that actually increases the distraction. So we want to look at that today. One of the things I learned in cycling, I used to cycle about 200 to 300 miles a week. One of the things I learned in cycling, it's a very important lesson to learn, and it's often learned a very difficult way. What you focus on, you run over. Did you know that? If you're a cyclist, you've experienced that. Sometimes you're cruising down the road, and we used to cruise about 25 miles an hour. You're cruising down the road, and you see a rock, and you look at the rock. All of a sudden, you're distracted, and instead of looking at the road, you look at the rock. The next thing you know, you ran over the rock, which, let me tell you, on a road bike is a bad experience. That means you get to play Coyote and Roadrunner. You fly through the air as you're looking around going like, wow, this is kind of weird. Splat. Because we lose our focus and we get distracted. The very thing we want to avoid, we wind up running into. So it's very important to keep a godly perspective and a godly focus. Let's pray. Father, help us today as we look at your word to focus on that which is eternal and that which is lasting and that which you want to produce and grow in us. And we thank you now. Your word's powerful. Let your word speak to our hearts today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. I want to read out the Amplified. It says, therefore we don't become discouraged or disappointed or afraid, though our outer self, do you realize our outer self is wasting away? I don't run faster and jump higher than I used to. In my mind, I do. Yet our inner self is being renewed day by day. That's what's most important. For our momentary light distress, the passing trouble we go through is producing for us eternal weight of glory, a fullness beyond all measure, surpassing all comparisons, so that we look not to the things which are seen, but the things that are unseen. For the things which are visible are temporary, and they're brief and fleeting. But the things that are invisible are everlasting and imperishable. That's what we want to look at today. What are we doing that's eternal versus temporary? I used to lift. I used to love to lift, and I would try to see how much I could lift. I remember benching, doing negative benches with 550 pounds and repping that, which is a lot. It's kind of a stupid way to say, used to say, especially if you make a mistake. And I thought, I am a bad man. I used to mess, well, I was like 46, 47 at the time. I used to mess with all the college students because I was lifting at Stetson, and I would mess with them and go like, take that, you young college punk. And, we would just laugh and joke with each other. I knew the guys and they knew me. We'd laugh and cut up. I was telling Michelle this past Thursday, first time in 9 years, I benched 40 pounds. I've had 7 shoulder surgeries. So this is the first time I've actually ever benched anything in 9 years. It was 40 pounds, and I'm like, what? But then I was telling her, I stopped and went, at least I can do that. There's a lot of things we invest in. Nothing wrong with being in shape. Nothing wrong with that. I recommend you do that. I work out 5 times a week. I recommend that you be in shape. But there's so much that's temporary. It's not designed to be eternal. I often envision what we're going to look like in heaven. You walk in all buff, got an 8-pack. Is that what we're going to look? Is that really what it's going to be about? I doubt it. Because that's pretty temporary stuff. It really is. So we focus on a lot of things, put a lot of energy in a lot of things that are just simply temporary. So what we want to think about today is, what are we doing that has a lasting impact? See, God has entrusted things to us. My children now are, it's hard for me to say this, 35 and 39. Whew. Really? And one of the greatest joys that we experience as parents, Don and I, is to hear our children say something like this. I was sharing with somebody the other day, and you guys fell out of my mouth. You mean you really were listening? See, we have the privilege of investing things that produce incredible results. It's about eternity. It's a long-term process, not a short term. I've studied the life of Susanna Wesley, which I think is a very amazing individual. I just felt to share this because if you're a parent, God's entrusted to you an opportunity to affect eternity in the way that you raise your child. You never know where your child's going to go. You never know when you're going to hear from your 35-year-old that they just had the privilege of sharing a godly truth that they learned from you with somebody else. So it keeps on going. Listen to this, just a short sketch about Susanna Wesley. By the way, she was the mother of John and Charles Wesley, who, my gosh, Charles Wesley wrote, 1,000 hymns. John Wesley preached to hundreds of thousands of people, the founder of Methodism. Susanna Wesley was married 44 years. Her family suffered illnesses, disease, poverty, and the death of children. Their home was destroyed by fire twice. Through all of it, she accepted the will of God and placed herself and her family in his hands. She bore between 17 and 19 children. 10 survived. She remained through all of it a steadfast Christian who taught not only through the scriptures, but through her own example of daily trust in God. She once wrote that we must know God experientially, for unless the heart perceive and know him to be the supreme good, their only happiness, unless the soul feel and acknowledge that she can have no repose, no peace, no joy, but in loving and being loved by him. Her sons won tens of thousands of souls to Christ. She could not have wished for more. When you think about that, through all the tragedy that she went through, her goal was to invest the things of God into her children. And they produced eternal results. So mom, dad, invest the things of God in your children. They will reap eternal results. Who knows how God will use your children? I just felt I needed to share that. Who knows how God will use your children and what they will do? Who knows? God does. So treat them, and I know you will, as the treasure that God has entrusted you with, and invest in them, and watch what God will do for eternity in and through them. Billy Graham says, so many of us ask God to change the circumstances to suit our desires, instead of us conforming our will to his. Don't let circumstances distress you. Rather, look for the will of God for your life to be revealed in and through those circumstances. You see, I have to learn to put my personal needs and comfort ahead of serving. To put my personal needs and comfort ahead of serving the kingdom and thus serving others is not my right as a follower of Jesus. I'm going to get really gut level honest with you. I remember going out in the woods after my wife had suffered a heart attack and she's had open heart surgery and a few other things. And I remember just having a screaming match with God. Just getting really real and honest. I pulled a David. David screamed at God a lot. David got angry a lot. And I remember going through that. Just being out in the woods, just me and God. I'm sure if somebody walked by and saw me and heard me, they probably went like, ooh, I'm going the other way. That guy is way too out for me. But in that process, I remember hearing from God, just stop and look at how I'm using this. I've shared with you before how many times that God has used all these sicknesses and illnesses that both of us have been through. I remember on my 7th shoulder surgery that they were getting ready to put me under. I said, whoa, wait a minute. And they said, what's wrong? I said, we haven't prayed yet. So I'm tying up the operating room. But we stopped and prayed. And the surgeon goes, thank you. I needed that today. It's been a rough day. You could have told me that afterwards, Doc. Seriously? It's been a rough day and now you're getting ready to cut me? But with Dawn and myself, I've had 11 surgeries. I can't remember how many she's had. But I can't tell you how many times we've had the privilege of ministering Jesus. I have lost count of that. I've lost count of the number of times we've had the privilege of sharing Jesus and praying with people and making Jesus known to them. Because if Jesus works, listen to me, in adverse circumstances. See, when everything's okay, Jesus works well, right? I mean, think about that for just a second. If everything's going good, our faith is like, when things start going south, you go, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. See, we lose our focus. But as we have the privilege of ministering even in our weakness, Paul talks about that in 2 Corinthians 4, that it makes the power of the gospel known, because now it becomes him and not us. And that's what it's really all about. It's about him. And in that long conversation that I had in the woods, I walked out realizing it's really not about me. It's about Jesus. It's about making him known. And he knows the best way to make his name known through you and I. And that's what we have to trust him for. And that's the hardest thing, I believe, to focus on. I have to realize that I have to be willing to put my personal needs and comfort behind serving Jesus in the kingdom. Is it convenient to serve Jesus? Not always. I can come in here and be with a bunch of Christians and we can worship and we have a blast. Have a good time and you walk out, yeah! But when stuff happens, that's where, as they say, the rubber meets the road. When stuff happens. We come in here to get strengthened and encouraged. We worship together to get strengthened and encouraged, so it prepares us for when we step out there. We're ready to go. And Jesus didn't promise everything to be hunky-dory and okay with no trouble. It's not what he promised. Jesus even said, in this world you'll have what? Trouble. But he also said, rejoice, for I have overcome them all. Pastor was with me as Donna went in to have her 11th heart cath. That's a lot of heart caths. The surgeon, the cardiologist said, we fully expect to find blockages, which means we'll have to go back in and do surgery, which, because of where they're at, it's going to be extremely difficult to do. But let's go check it out. So they go in and they do their process. He comes out. Pastor's standing with me. We're sitting here talking. He comes out and goes like, I'm very surprised at what I just saw. And of course, when you hear that, you go like, explain? He says, there are no blockages there. He said, that's not what I expected to see. And we both said, well, we prayed. And he said, that worked. This is a man that does not profess to know Jesus, but he's got living proof in front of him. He didn't do it. Jesus did it. And he's smart enough that he can't argue with that. I mean, think about that for just a second. So then we ask ourselves, are we willing to allow ourselves to be put in a position, even if we have to suffer? Are we willing to let ourselves be put in a position to suffer so that Jesus can be made known? That's the question in a nutshell. Are we willing to do that? Sometimes, even if we say no, Jesus, who knows what's best, allows it anyway. Because we learn something from it and grow from it. And Jesus is still made known. It's a willingness to be used by Jesus. Whatever that is. Years ago, when I got whacked by a truck riding my bicycle and got to fly like a coyote through the air for 100 feet. Kind of interesting experience. After I recovered, I'm a guy, so I want to get back on the bike. So I saved up money to buy a new bike. So I had my bike fund. And I was close to getting a new bike. I hear this voice. Pastor's sharing about a mission work that we want to get involved in. And I hear this voice clearly, give this amount. And I remember saying to God, you realize that's all I've got in my bike fund, don't you? Like he didn't know that. In case you don't know, Jesus, that's my bike fund. I said, okay, it's yours. So I wrote the check out, boom, done. I kid you not, 2 days later, now, by the way, I didn't think that I would get another bike because I did that. Don't misunderstand me. Sometimes we give thinking, if I give this, God's going to give me a brand new Rolls Royce. No, sorry, it doesn't work like that. If that's your motivation, keep your money in your pocket. I'm serious. Because God won't honor that. I gave it out of obedience. Sometimes the money is a distraction, and it keeps us from doing what we need to do. 2 days later, the guy comes up and goes, I understand your bike got all trashed when you got hit. And I go, yeah. He goes, I'd like to take care of that. I go, what do you mean by that? And he goes, I'd like to give you a particular bike. And I said, do you know what that particular bike cost? Way beyond what I would pay for one. He goes, no worry, here's the check. I went, okay, God, you're a lot smarter than I am. See, we get distracted by stuff, and we hold on to stuff that prevents us from focusing on eternity. My comfort, my money, whatever it is not more important than the kingdom. Newsflash, all of us that are suffering from aches and pains, we get a brand new body. And this one's eternal. That sounds like a good deal to me. Solomon said this life is but a what? It's gone. So what do we focus on? That which is eternal. We need to learn, point number 2 is we need to learn to manage distractions. There are distractions in our life. It's part of life. I want to show you a quick video. This is kind of weird. This is not super spiritual, but just bear with me. Okay.
The players wearing white pass the ball. The
Okay.
correct answer is 16 passes.
Okay, you can stop it there. 16 is the correct answer. By the way, there was a gorilla that came by. And the curtain changed colors. See, there's a lot going on. How many of you got 16, by the way? I'm just curious. Well, quite a few. I'm impressed. That's pretty good. How many of you saw the gorilla? Well, that's even better. How many of you saw the curtain change? Well, I'm really impressed. That's good. That's really good. We see there's so much going on sometimes. What was the original question? How many passes? We look at the gorilla. We look at the color and change. By the way, did you see the person leave? How many saw the person leave in the black shirt? See, a couple of you saw that too. See, that happened too. There's a lot going on in our life. It's easy to get distracted and not see everything. So we have to learn how to manage those. I said avoid, but guys, I switched it in my head to manage distractions. That's not your fault, that's mine. We need to learn how to manage those distractions because distractions exist. They're part of life. The goal was count the ball. What we're doing is, wait a minute, there's people wearing black shirts. Wait a minute, there's a gorilla in the room. Wait a minute, the curtain changed. Wait a minute, somebody left. And then we forget that wait a minute, where was I? 12, 11, 9? How many do I, boom. And we've lost the objective because we got distracted. We involve ourselves in a whole lot of things with busyness. And we forget some of the most important things in our life. It's easy to wake up in the morning and take off without first checking in with our Father in heaven to get his orders for the day, rather than saying, but I got this list. Rather than saying, Father, notice Jesus' example. He went away early in the morning to pray and seek the face of God. If Jesus needed to prioritize his day and manage everything going on, who are we to think that we don't need to do the same thing? We have to learn how to manage our distractions. See, it's okay to be involved in a lot of stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But we can't do that and lose our focus on what's most important. Here's what it says in Colossians 2. Set your mind and keep focused habitually on the things above, things that are heavenly, not on things that are on the earth, which have only temporary value. We invest a lot of time and energy in things that really don't have eternal value. Now, distraction, I believe, is anything that takes us away from God-centered commitments and priorities. Now, some people take that to extreme. I remember there used to be a man that lived in DeLand, and he was, well, I won't mention his name. let me suffice it to say he had buku millions of bucks. But he didn't believe he needed to pay his power bill because Jesus was coming back in 6 months. So guess what? He found himself in the dark. He didn't think that was important. Well, okay, have fun in the dark. So don't take it to extremes. Got to be careful of that. But we have to maintain God-centered priorities. We jump into things without checking in first. And so the enemy uses those things many times as a distraction to keep us from doing what God intended us to do. And thus we miss opportunities to make Jesus known. Sometimes it's stuff. One of my biggest weaknesses is flashlights. You can ask my wife. I'm like a crow. If I see a flashlight, I go, ooh, flashlight. I have about 40 of them at my house. When I go to Walmart, I have to walk by real fast if they're flashlights. And she'll drag me by the flashlights because you gotta go, ooh, a new flashlight. Gotta have it. If she's with me at Walmart, she makes sure I don't go by the flashlights. It's a distraction. What's your distraction? We've all got some. I remember a man I used to know, he said, Jesus told me not to go to church today because I needed to go fishing on the pier at Daytona. And I went like, whoa, stop, wait a minute. So why do you think Jesus told you to go to the pier fishing on Sunday instead of coming to church? Did you witness to anybody? Did you leave the gospel with anyone? Did you pray with anyone? Well, no, we just caught fish. And that wasn't Jesus. See, fishing for that guy was a distraction. Nothing wrong with fishing, unless you're doing it on Sunday instead of being at church. Then we need to talk. You see, that's it. Those are the kind of distractions we have to watch out for. Things that take us away from the things of God. We have to learn how to manage those things. I read this funny bumper sticker the other day. It says, "He who dies with the most toys still dies." People invest in so much stuff, thinking that will bring them satisfaction. No, still die. Kind of interesting, I go in a lot of different scenes with the sheriff's department. Years ago, there was a man in DeLand who passed away in his double-wide mobile home, and he had millions of dollars in his mobile home in cash. Didn't take it with him. Think about that. Nothing wrong with having money. But if that's where you focus everything, it's all very temporary. You can't take it with you. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to invest in things that really don't matter. It's easy to get distracted by people. Sometimes we run into people that we see an outward appearance, and it prevents us many times from sharing the message of the gospel with them. I remember I was at this, I love Tex-Mex. I was at this Tex-Mex restaurant, and the guy sitting across from me probably wasn't 3 feet between us. He was one weird-looking dude. But before it was done, we had a great conversation, just hooting and hollering and laughing and carrying on. He was just a weird dude, but we had a blast. We can look at weirdness, and it distracts us. We can look at appearance. People look scary. It Jesus comes to us and says, would you share the message of the gospel with him? Oh, he looks mean. Oh, she looks kind of weird. I don't know. And it distracts us from the real mission, and then is sharing the gospel message. I told the guys this at Megaman, I'll share it with you. Years ago, we were helping a church down south and reaching out into the community. I remember looking at the pastor going, like, what is the worst place in this town? And he said, and I didn't even have to think about it. He said, the ghetto bar. That's actually the name of the bar. I said, okay, I'm in. So let's go stop by and grab some pizzas and go to the ghetto bar. We walked in the ghetto bar, and that was the weirdest assortment of people I've ever seen in my entire life. There was one guy, did a double take. I actually thought I was looking at Popeye. He had these huge forearms, and they were two anchors tattooed on seriously, and I went like, that dude is Popeye. There was a lady wearing a leopard skin coat with a purse and a little dog hanging out of it. There was just an unusual assortment of people there. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, you really picked the strangest place in town to go to. But here's what we did. I said, guys, and it was kind of, the entrance was really interesting. How many of you like Westerns, or maybe you watch Westerns? You know the scene where the guy goes into the bar and the doors open and everything gets real quiet? Music stops playing, everybody. Well, that's kind of what happened when we walked in the ghetto bar. Everything stopped and everybody went like this. We said, hey guys, do you mind if we pray for you? Can we just speak a blessing over your lives today? And you know what they did? They looked at us, and some of them had tears coming down their eyes. And they said, yes, would you do that? And we go, yeah. Everybody took off their hats, respectfully bowed, as we prayed over them and blessed them. Black, white, Latino. It was a broad spectrum of people in there. And then we served each one of them pizza and blessed each one of them and prayed over them. See, it's easy to get distracted by the way people look and the way they present themselves. But all Jesus sees is somebody who needs him. That's all he sees. And that's all we need to see, is somebody that needs Jesus. And that's why we're there. I had a blast there. I had a great time there. One of the guys was kind of uncomfortable. He says, give the preach a beer, it's really hot outside. That was his way of kind of breaking the air. But we just kind of laughed, We didn't get it, but we didn't take one. And so we just sat and ate pizza with him, had a blast. Isn't that where Jesus hung out? Isn't that where he said he hung out? He didn't have a problem with it, right? I'm not saying you should go start a bar ministry. But I am saying this, don't be afraid when you run into people. They don't look like you. They don't act like you. It's okay. Jesus cares about them greatly. And we have the privilege of sharing the message of the gospel. Here's what it says in Psalms 119:37. I'm going to read this out of the Amplified as well. Turn my eyes away from all those worldly, meaningless things that distract, and let your priorities be mine. And restore me with renewed energy in all of your ways. And last but not least, in order to stay focused, I believe we have to set certain priorities. As I mentioned earlier, it's really easy to run out the door sometimes and forget to check in. I talk to people, and sometimes they say, well, I've decided I'm going to spend an hour in prayer every day. You probably will fail. I'm sorry. That sounds kind of rude. I would rather set 5 minutes as the priority and then make it 20 than set 20 and fail. 5 minutes is better than promising an hour and getting it once every 2 weeks. You understand what I'm saying? We have to learn how to set priorities and focus on what's important. It seems simple, but it's easy sometimes to forget to read the Word, to forget to check in and pray, to forget a few minutes of just spending the time with Jesus and just worshiping and listening to what he has to say. That's the way to stay centered and to stay focused on his will. It's easy sometimes to forget that. I'm on YouVersion, and I have friends. I'm friends with a lot of people here at church. And the reason I do that is to keep myself accountable. I know that I have a responsibility. They go like, well, wait a minute, Pastor Carroll, he skipped a couple of days here. What's wrong with him? You know, I do that on purpose because I don't want to skip those days. I don't mind being accountable. It just helps me stay focused. That's all. Nothing wrong with that. My problem is I want to do 30 plans at the same time. You see, when just a few, it's really what I need. Does that make sense? We promise some grandiose, huge thing, and Jesus didn't tell us to promise that. We just do it because we think somehow if we do more, we'll be better, and God will like us more. It's not necessary. Check in with him. Just spend time with him. Spend time in his word. Get to know him better. This is our opportunity on this planet to prepare for eternity. That's why it's another reason it's important to read his word, to get to know him, to spend time with him. I like to talk. I do. I can just get up and talk about nothing because I can talk. But you know what? I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That means I should listen twice as much as I talk. The hardest thing for me to do, and this is confession time, is to listen as I spend time with Jesus. Because I got these things that we need to talk about. So I'm, okay, I'm good. Rather than just being quiet and listening. I have to work at that. Just stop and listening. But when we stop and listen and let God speak into us the things that are important to him, that becomes our priority. Not what's important to us, but what's important to him. And that's how we stay focused. You've heard the old saying, Jesus first, others second, myself last. We deal in a world now where so many people focus on themselves first and everybody else afterwards. It's got to be Jesus first, others second, our family. Our ministry, and ourself last. That means sometimes you and I are going to be uncomfortable. We have to make sacrifices. We have to do above and beyond to make Jesus known. See, everything has to be looked at through the eyes of eternity. I'll leave you with a few verses, please. And let you consider these. But Jesus has said this to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My kindness and my mercy are more than enough, always available regardless of the situation. My power is being perfected, that is completed. It shows itself most effectively in your weakness. And Paul says, therefore, I will all the more gladly boast in my weaknesses so that the power of Christ may be known and may dwell in me. And here's what it says in Corinthians as well. For we don't preach ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, and ourselves as bondservants for Christ's sake. And we have this precious treasure, and Pastor Peter shared this in the first service. For we have this precious treasure, the good news about salvation in unworthy earthen vessels of human frailty. See, if you and I are super strong, and we have a red S on our chest and a cape behind us, people will look at us. And that's not who they need to see. But when we're weak, when we struggle, when we recognize we're human, that's when people see Jesus. And that's who we want them to see. So that the grandeur and the surpassing greatness of the power will be shown to be from God and not from us. It's pretty amazing that God chooses to use us. And I promise you, if you and I stay focused on him and his will and his way and his word, he won't steer us wrong. He won't leave us hanging out there with nothing to hold on to. He won't abandon us or leave us. Is it fun to go through stuff? No. Is God honored? Yes. I read in my devotions the other day, and it's pretty amazing, and I want to leave you with this. The person asked the question in the devotions, he said this. He said, I believe that it will change your life if you recognize that you're here on this planet because God sent you. Think about it. We're here because God sent us here, because he has a mission and a purpose for us. And if we stay focused on him and attentive to him, hearing his voice, he will show us. He will set the right priorities in our life. And he'll use us to do amazing things that are way beyond our skill set to do. Listen, I was a little kid who was so insecure. You realize I cried every day at school until I was in the 7th grade. I was so insecure. So if you were to ask me whether or not I would be doing this now, or even as a 17-year-old, I started preaching when I was 17, I would look at you and go like, not a chance. But see, that's the power of God. I look back on those things and go like, wow, God, aren't you amazing that you could take all of that and do incredible things with it? What changed my life is realizing that God wanted to use me. That's what changed me. That's what made me different. That's what made me secure, is realizing that God sent me and wants to use me. Would you pray with me, please? Father, every person in this room has giftings and talents and abilities. God, every one of us have been blessed by you. Every one of us have giftings that you want to use for your honor and for your glory and for your purposes. God, keep us focused on you. Keep our eyes on you. Don't let us get distracted by junk, by stuff, by trouble, by difficulties. Don't let us take our eyes off you. Father, for your honor and for your glory, make yourself known in us and through us. In the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Would you stand? Thank you for being here today. It's good to have you. Thank you. We're here, the staff is here. Pastor Peter and Pastor Michelle, myself, others are here to pray with you. If we can pray with you about anything, it will be our privilege. Listen, if you've never met Jesus, it's his desire and privilege to unfold in you the amazing plan that he has for your life. Oh my gosh, does he have amazing things for you. Psalms 139 says, before you were even born, God mapped out your life. You're that important to him. So if you don't know him, it would be our privilege to introduce you to the amazing, amazing love that Jesus has for you. So we're here. We'd love to pray with you. Thank you for being here. I'm not going to formally dismiss you. Whenever you're ready to go, you can go. All right. Thanks for being here today. God bless you.